seed beads, more seed beads. This is a pipe bag. This is an otter skin. This is called applique beadwork. Now the moccasins were what's called lazy stitch. They used to call it lazy squaw stitch. And the squaw is a female Indian, and I would never call it lazy squaw stitch. I call it lazy stitch because any woman that would sit and bead like that is not lazy. They are very, very talented because I have tried to do it myself, and it is extremely tough. This was an otter skin that a friend of mine named George Nolan made for me, and he makes reproductions for museum. This is called a museum quality reproduction. This bag right here, the opening is here in the mouth. This would sell anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500. And these old greasy yellow beads right here at the bottom, you cannot find these beads anymore. They're called a greasy yellow, and nobody has made them for hundreds of years. Now the trappers and mountain men had steel. This is called a hawk. It's not called a hatchet. It's not called an axe. It is called a hawk. This is a throwing hawk. They would use them for survival. They would use them to cut wood. They would use them for protection. This is one of those items. The steel is something that the Native Americans never had. The Native Americans really liked them. I have on a possibles bag, and everything I possibly need to survive is in this bag. My powder horn is made of a cow horn, and if you can hear this, it is hollow. It has beads on it, it has pieces of antler on it, and it's just a leather lace. Up here on my possibles bag, I have a ball starter, and I'll show you what that's for in just a second. So this was fit to me. It's just as long as my fingers, from my elbow to the end of my fingers. That way I can use it for games. I can use it for throwing hatchets. Heber's hatchets in Logan, they use something very similar to this. Something the white man had was they had a steel. You need a piece of flint or a very hard rock to make sparks. You'd use a piece of char cloth, which is black, is a piece of cotton cloth to catch a spark in. Then you would use cedar bark, and that's what is in this can, this tin, is cedar bark. This is a piece of char cloth. It'll catch a spark, and then you have to blow on it along with cedar to get fire out of it. Now, this is a little tinder box that the white man had. These are made out of brass. This one has a magnifying glass. And all the boys in the class know what you do with magnifying glasses. You start fires.
Or burn hands.
Flint comes in all different colors. Gray, green, red. Some of these I've paid money for. Some of them I've just picked up on riverbanks. They don't have to be flint, just a good hard rock. This is called Wyoming flint, and all we seen when we seen it was that little piece right there sticking out of the dirt. Okay, this piece, this gray stuff here, is petrified coral from Florida. It is extremely hard, very, very hard. The white man had wool blankets. These wool blankets are very warm. They pull the moisture away from you. They pull the sweat away from you. They don't let the rain through. This is what they traded for beaver hides, was wool blankets. This is what the Native Americans liked. Hudson Bay Company is one of the big companies. They still make wool blankets. This is a coat made out of a wool blanket. This is called a capote. You want to come help me? We're going to have a model here. She's going to put this on. There's a belt. You want to pull that around and tie it?
I'm sorry, yeah, it's locked.
That's okay, let me grab mine.
You're going to get warm here very
All
quickly.
right,
Now,
ready.
this has a big flap over the shoulders to shed water. It's made big. It's got great big pockets to store stuff in. It's got a hood on it. And if she were turned around, you'd think it was Harry Potter standing here, wouldn't you?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so this is just one of the items that the Native Americans would go to the rendezvous and trade pelts for, whether it be coyote pelts, fox pelts, beaver pelts. They would trade for all this stuff. And they would do straight across trades. When a trade is done, you shake a hand, and it's just like writing a contract. Okay? Gets warm fast, doesn't it? And in the winter, they're really, really nice to wear. You go to a rendezvous, you'll see the mountain men and mountain women wearing them. Back here, I have my fancy shirt. I'm wearing my regular shirt. This is my fancy shirt. There are no buttons on this again. It's all laces and ties. This is an old style shirt. Around 1800 is when they wore these shirts. Back here on the tables, I have some different hides. On the floor is just part of a buffalo hide. On the table back here is an elk hide. This is deer. This one is a mountain lion. You can see the head on the lion. And he's taller than I am. He's about 7.5 feet tall. Okay, from nose to tail. This is a small bear hide. This one is from Utah. Okay, it is brown, but it is not a grizzly bear. This is what they call cinnamon colored black bear. There is a big black bear right here. I don't know if this bear was taken in Utah, but this one also is from nose to tail is a little over 6 feet. But you can see how dark colored he is. He is a bear. Now, one other item was a rifle. This is called a flintlock. The flintlock has a flint here. The ignition system is this pan right here. There's a pan for powder. This is called a frizzen. You flip it down, you cock it. There are 2 triggers. This is called a patch box. This is where the patches were kept. Because when you loaded this, you'd take your powder horn. You'd dump powder down the barrel. I'm not brave enough to do that, so I use a smaller flask to put it down the barrel. Then you would put a patch. You put a patch on there and a ball. You would take your ball starter, tap it, in you go. Ramrod, tap it in. Now I know this is empty because the ramrod goes all the way in. You take your ramrod out. If you left your ramrod in the rifle and shot it and your ramrod is gone, you wouldn't have any way of tamping it in. That is a flintlock. This rifle is a Hawkins. And here again, the sheath for it, my gun case is made out of deer hides. This is the same thing. It has a nipple on it, the hammer, 2 triggers, the stock and open sights. This is a cap and ball percussion rifle. It is loaded the same exact way as the flintlock. Now I know some of you, your dads have these, your grandpas have them, your uncles have them, and they're really fun to shoot. This has been quick today, and I've gone through a lot of stuff. I hope that we can answer a couple questions.
Okay, I'm gonna let you facilitate. Try to pull one from each class a question.
You can only answer one question at a time though, so don't everybody try to jump in there.
Okay, put your hands up to the
Okay,
screen.
friends, if
got
you
one.
have a question, you can raise your hands, and then we'll let you know we can call on you. So don't unmute yourself until we call on you.
Top left.
Okay, Ivy, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
What's the biggest fur you've caught?
What's the biggest fur you've caught?
The biggest fur that I have caught is a coyote in a trap. Okay, next question. Raise your hands.
Okay, we're gonna do some from Mrs. Wise's class.
Carlos, how about you go, bud? Unmute your mic and then ask your question, Carlos.
Why did you call the thingy on the end, why you call it a eagle? I forgot
The
about
eagle
that.
hatchet. You asked about the eagle hatchet, right?
The eagle hatchet or the hawk?
Hatchet.
The hatchet is actually called a hawk. It is a throwing device. It was developed for a throwing device. So they call them a hawk. Not an eagle, but a hawk. Okay?
He had it typed in the comments.
Okay.
Okay.
Next question.
Okay, let's do one from Mrs. Curtis or Mrs. Peck's class. If you have a question, remember raise your hand. Okay.
The one with the J on it right there. He had his hand up.
But the hard thing is I can't see everyone. Okay, if you have a question for Mrs. Curtis or Mrs. Peck's class, type it in the comments and then we'll see if we can answer some of them. So if you have a question, you can type it in the comment in the chat bar.
I don't know who that was on the right-hand side of
Yeah,
Mrs. Curtis's
the hard thing is
class.
I can't see everybody. 'Cause we can only see this many.
The one with the J in it. He had his hand up, but I
Yeah,
can't see who it is.
Rachel, did you
That's
still have a
Giovanni.
question?
There he is.
There he is, Giovanni.
Nope. Okay.
Maylee's got one over here. if you
Okay,
wanna
we'll go
jump
over to
there.
Mrs. Wise's class then if nobody in our classes have any.
Okay, Maylee, go ahead. Unmute your mic.
She hasn't unmuted.
Yeah, she's right here. Okay, Maylee, go ahead.
And then,
Oh, you're
Giovanni.
unmuted, but we can't hear you.
yeah, we had that problem with Gavin yesterday.
Okay. Maylee, why don't you type it in? And Bowden, you had one. So Bowden, let's unmute your mic and we'll have you ask yours real quick.
I forgot it.
Okay, Rachel, did you remember your question? Okay, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask.
What one was like the most expensive or the hardest one to get?
All about those, I told you, it's all about those things.
It's all about money, and it's a girl thing. It has to do with jewelry, sweetheart. It was a strand of beads, the big strand of chevron beads, the blue, red, and white chevron beads that I have. That is the most expensive thing I have ever purchased. I didn't pay $2,500 for them, but that's what he was asking. He has 2 strands of even bigger ones than that, and he only wants $12,000 a strand for the great, great big ones. Maybe if I sell my kids and my dogs and my house, I can afford to buy those, but not this year. Any other questions?
Okay, Bowden, we'll try you again. Did you remember it? Okay.
Were there lots of spiders when you slept?
Lots of spiders where you slept, is that what he said?
Were you asking about spiders?
Yeah, were there lots of spiders when you were sleeping?
Like outside?
You know what?
Like, did they crawl on you
I
sometimes?
I have had spiders crawl on me when I have been camping out and stuff like that. I have had mosquitoes fly up my nose. I have had flies land on my face. And I have had coyotes come right into camp when we're sleeping by a campfire and come right up and sniff me and the guy I was with. We were up in the high Uintas elk hunting and we slept out one night. But no, I've never, the spiders, usually spiders are just as afraid of us as we are of them. So you usually don't have a lot of problems with spiders. Okay?
Okay.
Let's take one more.
Got one time for one more.
Okay, do we have any more from Mrs. Peck or Mrs. Curtis's class? If you do, you can type it in the comment bar.
Type your question.
You got one right here, the second one up. Second row in, he's got his hand up.
That's fine.
On mine?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one with the headset on, the mic.
Oh, Jet?
Oh, Jen,
So,
do we have anything coming in from our class?
how many furs have you caught since you started?
You know what? I started trapping when I was 12 years old, and I have no idea how many animals I trapped when I was younger, and I did it to make money. I sold the pelts, I sold the muskrat hides, and that's mainly what I was after when I was trapping, was muskrats. So I can't tell you a number because I really don't know.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Question?
How long would it?
How long would a trip normally be?
Oh, when mountain men would go, how long would they be gone at a time before they go back to their cache?
Usually a mountain man, when he was out on a trip, when he was trapping, he might be out for 2 or 3 days. It might take him that long to either walk his trap line or ride a horse on his trap line. But he would stay out for 3, sometimes 4 months at a time, come into a rendezvous, come into a town or something like that to get supplies, and they go right back out.
So-
Mountain men were very, very solemn people. They wanted to be by themselves. They didn't want to be around other people.
So they didn't explain how they don't carry that food. They have to.
Right, and their food they don't carry, they only took exactly what they needed to take. If they were hungry, they might kill a rabbit, and that rabbit was 2 or 3 days worth of food. They didn't waste anything. If they trapped a beaver, they used the bones, they used the meat from the beaver, they ate the beaver, they kept the hide, they would use the heads for rattles, they would make decorations out of them. They used everything on that animal they could possibly use. And they didn't waste. They tried not to waste anything. They knew what conservation meant way back then. And they practiced it. Every one of them had to. It's just like the buffalo. When all the buffalo were shot on the plains, they just about went extinct.
Where's the biggest cache?
What's up?
Okay, I have a question I'm going to ask really quick. There's rumors that there's been big caches that were here in Cache Valley, some that may never been returned. Do you know of any of those?
I do not. I know where there's some caves, and there have been people in those caves. I don't know how far back that was. And a cache is not only a cave; it can just be a hiding spot. What Mrs. Curtis is asking is there's reports of caches that have never been found in Cache Valley, and that's probably true. There are probably caves that have never been discovered. They may have been covered up with a landslide. They may, the mountain men, the trappers, may have covered them up manually by putting rocks in front of them, but I'm sure there is something there. It's just like every year they find different things up in the mountains up here. When you go hiking, if you find an arrowhead, when was that arrowhead made by a Native American, and how long has it been laying there? It could have been laying there since the 1700s or even the 1600s. You never know. They can carbon date the rocks and tell you how old the rock is, but you never know for sure how old they are.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you for letting me be a part of your school year this year. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come and do this. Thank you, students. You've been very good.
Okay, boys and girls, each year we usually give our mountain man a big round of applause. So would you like to try to do that right now? I know it's a little different. So you can go ahead and give your round of applause. Okay? And then then each year we usually give them a loaf of bread. I usually try to get from Great Harvest the cash bread, but unfortunately the cash was not out of the oven yet. So we do have some honey. Oh, I think it's actually 9 grain. So we usually give them a loaf of bread. If you had been here, we would have made some homemade butter and actually shared some bread with you today. But keep in mind, we actually have lots of fun things we still have planned for you for next week. So you've got book reports possibly being done. We'll have a chance for all of you to come back next Thursday. That will be coming to you as to when you can come. And there'll be special treats waiting for you when you come. If you like to bring back your Trapper packet, we will have a box if you want to drop it in there. So anybody that brings back any packet work will also have a special treat waiting for you then. But in the meantime, keep working. One more thing I wanted to tell you, we just learned in staff meeting yesterday, is that they're going to have reading counts available in the summer about the 15th of July. We'll have the exact date on that. So you check your Google Classroom